Well, hoo boy, we are talking about a pretty interesting piece of news today that a lot of people are interested in and talking about, and many people are taking many different opinions and ideas away from this news about what Nintendo might be doing. So it's a fascinating conversation. It obviously feeds into a lot of things I've been talking about for a few years now. And of course, I want to chime in. And what we're talking about is this news that apparently it seems like Nintendo might be increasing their forecast of the amount of Switches they expect to sell in 2023. They might be able to manufacture more than they initially thought. They also seem to expect demand will be increasing, and there are reasons to believe that that is definitely going to be true. But also, some people are wondering if maybe this is a sign that the next-gen console that many of us, myself included, have been talking about for a while, have been expecting sometime soonish, and maybe that's actually going to be pushed off even farther into the future simply because of this increased manufacturing. It's an interesting idea, and like I said, I have a lot of thoughts about it. So Bloomberg is the outlet that initially got this story out there, and here we have a Nintendo Life story that's kind of covering it, because Bloomberg requires you to pay for a monthly or annual subscription or whatever to read their news articles, and it's really stupid and outdated and dumb, and I don't know why anyone would do that because it's just news. So luckily Nintendo Life has covered it for us, and they link to the original article as well. According to a new report from Bloomberg, the Kyoto-based video game giant actually plans to increase production of the hybrid machine in its sixth year after shifting roughly 21 million systems in the previous fiscal year. Although it lowered its sales forecast to 19 million last November, the company is now apparently convinced it can manufacture more units. The same report, sourcing people familiar with the matter, goes on to state how Nintendo has already told suppliers and assembly partners about its plans to churn out even more Switch units in the coming fiscal year, beginning this April. So currently it doesn't seem like we have an official number of what they expect their increased production to be for 2023, but initially they had lowered the forecast down to 19 million units, which they're saying is down from 21 million units the year before, right? So they went from 21 to projecting 19, and now they're thinking they might be able to sell more than 19 million or produce more than 19 million to get them out on store shelves and whatnot. And it's definitely interesting. I mean, increasing production and increasing your forecast is always a good sign for any company in any industry, because the more of your product you expect to sell, the more money you expect to make. So the real question I think we want to talk about, and that obviously I want to chime in on, is if this means that with Nintendo making more and more Switches and seeming like they're going to increase their push of the current Nintendo Switch in 2023, does that affect what might be happening with the next-gen console or a Nintendo Switch 2? All of these fun things you guys probably love hearing me talk about for 3 years at this point. And I guess the answer is, you know what? Maybe. It definitely might mean that. I think that this could mean a couple of different things. And I know a lot of folks might want me or other people to just very firmly say it means exactly this one thing and this is the thing it means. But that's not how this kind of news works, right? We have to account for a lot of different options because no one actually knows what any of this could truly mean. But we can certainly glean some ideas about what it could mean, right? And so, to me, when I hear this, let's cut to brass tacks here, okay? When I hear this, they're increasing from their 19 million production. They're telling their manufacturers that in April they want to be able to make and produce more Switches than they initially thought, because maybe the chip shortages are becoming less and less of a problem. What that tells me is that April is the month right before The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom comes out, and so I think one of many reasons they might be increasing production in April specifically is probably for The Legend of Zelda. I don't necessarily think Zelda is the only reason they might increase production this year, but I think it's one of the biggest factors to consider, and the April timeframe is part of why I think that. So if we consider the fact that in May, Tears of the Kingdom is coming out, it's going to be one of the biggest video games released across all platforms in the entire industry in 2023, and it's almost for sure going to be Nintendo's biggest title. I don't know what else could release that would actually sell more. Maybe Mario Kart 9, but we know that's probably not going to be coming next year, or this year. We're now in 2023. I have to remind myself of that. So I feel like Zelda's most likely the reason, or the biggest reason at least, that they might be increasing production. Not to mention the fact that there is the reports and the rumors and the leaked images that there might be a Zelda-themed Switch OLED that's going to release alongside. of Tears of the Kingdom. And while none of that's confirmed and the pictures look both fake but also very real, I have to say that in a world where there is a Zelda-themed Switch that's going to release, and I honestly think there probably will be, we can't forget that they might be just increasing production solely for the sake of making a few million of those, right? Because they know that not only will some people pick up their first Switch to buy with Zelda, and so they might pick up the Zelda-themed Switch, a lot of folks and a lot of Switch owners buy secondary or third Switches just for these themed versions, right? So they probably could be planning to make anywhere from, I don't know, 2 to 5 million Zelda-themed Switch OLEDs just for that one SKU, as opposed to just making more regular Switches, right? And so if that's true, that there's a Zelda-themed Switch coming, and with the production starting the month before Tears of the Kingdom releases, there's just a lot of reasons to believe that one of the main reasons they would increase production is specifically for the release of Zelda and a Zelda-themed Switch. Another thing I want to reiterate is the fact that, in theory, we should be seeing the chip shortages that have been impacting all of gaming and all of the other tech industries out there. These chip shortages should be slowing down and they should be going away. And I believe that I actually read something recently that that is the case. And so it could also be a situation where Nintendo realizes with more parts available, not only can they increase production to meet the demand for Zelda and the Zelda-themed Switches, but they could probably just make more Switches than they previously thought they could, because perhaps these chip shortages are finally slowing down. You know, we're coming out of COVID more and more every day, and in a lot of ways it almost feels like it's already old news for many people in many places. And so that could also be helping Nintendo increase their production. The question then becomes, are they increasing production because the demand is truly there, or are they just hoping that the demand is really going to be there? And that's a very important distinction when we think about this from a business lens. We have to remember that we're not talking about Switches that have already been sold in 2023, right? These are Nintendo's forecasts for 2023. These are the amount of Switches they think they can make and that they hope that they can sell. This isn't the same as looking back on a completed year and looking at the actual sales of Switches. So there is a chance, I'm not making a prediction on what's going to happen this year, but I just want to point out that there is a chance that Nintendo is thinking that they can sell more Switches in 2023 than they truly will end up selling. I mean, at this point, we're going to be within the 7th year of the Switch's life. Zelda's going to be a huge boost for sales, and it's going to be an amazing game. And the Switch is obviously going to have a very good year. There's been no bad years for Switch sales, right? So it's going to do well, even if it only hits that 19 million, or even if it comes in less than 19 million. If the thing sells 15 to 18 million, I mean, that's still very good sales for any console within any given year. And so I do think it's going to sell well, but is it going to sell as well as they're maybe hoping that they could? Who knows? We're within the 7th year. They've already sold 115 million units of these things. I mean, at some point, you sold Switches to almost everyone out there that's going to need one. And yes, the Switch is a device that many people buy more than one of, and many households have multiple Switches within. We have 2 Switches in our house, for example. I have one, my wife has one. So that stuff does happen, and that's why they probably will still sell very strongly this year. And maybe they're going to sell more than last year. Maybe they're going to meet this demand that Nintendo is expecting. Maybe Zelda helps them, but also maybe not. And so we have to kind of wait and see how that all plays out. And so lastly, what does this mean for a possible Switch 2, right? What does this mean for their next-gen console and the release plans and all of this stuff? Here's the thing. A lot of people are already spinning this to this concept of the Switch 2 plans are already set, and we know for sure what's going to happen with the Switch 2 just because we're reading this report that Nintendo is going to make more Switches in 2023. And here's the thing. That could be true. I'm not going to pretend like it's impossible for this to be a sign that Nintendo thinks they can sell the regular 2017 Switch for a lot longer than even I've been predicting. Maybe that's the case. Maybe this means that the Switch 2, you know, we're just going to call it Switch 2. We don't know what it is. But let's say that maybe Nintendo thinks the Switch 2 is going to come out like in 2025, and that increasing production in 2023 is a sign for that. I will admit to you guys, there is something possibly to that. Because before this story came out, I would not have expected them to think that they need to be making more of the 2017 Switch models, and that they need to be increasing their forecast of the sales of that this year. That caught me off guard. This did certainly surprise me. However, I don't really think it's confirmation of all that much. And I think that some people are stretching, you know, in their YouTube videos and in their article titles to say that Switch 2 is now guaranteed 2025 or 2024, whatever. There is no guarantee, man. Just like my predictions have been that we would see it in 2022 or 23, there's no guarantee of that either. I've never said there's a guarantee of my predictions. And while my predictions may be wrong, and maybe this is a sign they're wrong, it's also not confirmation that they're wrong either. I think after this story has now come out that there's still just as much of a chance that Nintendo could potentially reveal new hardware or confirm new hardware by the end of 2023 while still having increased production this year, right? It's 50-50, so I'm willing to admit that maybe this is showing that they're not going to be ready to reveal their new thing just yet. Maybe they really want 2023 to be 100% only focused on the current 2017 Switch, and they're not going to be ready to show us this device this year. But I also still think it could be possible. Like I said at the beginning here, maybe most of this increased production is due to the fact that Zelda is releasing in the first half of the year. And they know that they're going to be able to sell a lot of Switches for Zelda, and they're going to be able to sell a lot of these possible Zelda-themed OLED Switches the first half of this year, and maybe that's where most of the production comes from. And then near the end of the year, they might reveal or confirm that the next thing is coming. And I know a lot of folks bring up, a decent point that revealing a new Switch at the end of this year that doesn't release could hurt their holiday sales, and I understand that, but I don't know that it would do as much damage as people think, especially if Nintendo confirms that it might be backwards compatible, which we all hope it would be. People could still buy their Switches this year and then know that their games are going to be able to work on the next thing whenever that comes next year. So, or maybe not. Maybe that's not what's going to happen. Maybe, again, this article is confirming that the 2017 Switch is all we're going to see this year. And that would certainly be disappointing to a lot of us, but maybe that's the case and they don't want to reveal the thing until next year. So time will tell what they actually choose to do now that we know they're increasing production in 2023. I do still want to reiterate that for myself, even though I love the current Switch, and if it's all I have to play my Nintendo games on for another year or 2 or even 3 years, I will do it and I'll still enjoy those games, but at the same time, I'll be disappointed. I think one of the reasons I've been really pinpointing this 2023 year to kind of get some kind of confirmation from Nintendo is not only because I think it makes sense just timeline-wise and hardware-wise, because the Switch is just very outdated at this point. It's also that I'm just personally ready to see it. Like, I love the Switch. I always remind you guys how much I love the Switch. And a lot of people who want to see Nintendo's next console also love the Switch. But it's also okay to love the current thing but be excited for the new thing, or to desire the new thing, right? I know I try to get this messaging across to you guys a lot in my videos I make about this topic, because I think some people kind of forget that, or they get blinded by it. Or like I said recently, they get that tunnel vision about, I just love the Switch now, and it's the only thing I'm willing to focus on. And so I'm not that way. I can like the Switch, but also be ready and excited for whenever we see this new thing. And I'm ready for Nintendo to move on, or at least confirm to me that they're moving on like next year. So I'm sorry, I'm just going to say I would prefer for them to give us some kind of trailer or confirmation or a press release or anything in 2023, probably after Zelda releases, that says, hey, here's our next thing, and you're going to have it released next year. You're going to play it in 2024. I wanted to think that there was a chance we would actually still play it by the end of this year. And while that's still not totally off the table, it does seem less likely with this new report, I admit. So that part is probably wrong. Maybe we're not going to be able to even have a chance at playing it this year. I still want to believe we could see it this year, man. I know that there's worries about damaging their holiday sales, but Nintendo stuff just sells, man. And like I said recently, too, when the next-gen thing comes out, there will still be several years of overlap where Nintendo is still making the Nintendo Switch, and people will still be buying the Nintendo Switch, and games will still be made for the Nintendo Switch, while the new thing also goes out to store shelves, and everyone's excited to buy and play that, right? Are we going to see that Metroid Prime 4 is going to be confirmed for like a cross-gen or a next-gen thing? I mean, we have to start thinking about the games that make sense for Nintendo to confirm for next-gen. What is their games lineup for 2023 outside of Fire Emblem, which just released, Zelda in May, And Pikmin 4 hopefully still coming out this year. We don't know anything about when Pikmin 4 is releasing. We don't know about Metroid Prime 4. Is there going to be a new Mario Kart, a new Mario game, a new Donkey Kong? All these franchises that we want to see soon, but don't we want to see Nintendo instead release those on their next-gen machine? We don't want those to be held back by the current Switch. And so Nintendo now has to balance selling Zelda, selling more of these old Switches that they're making this year, while also making sure that Metroid and Mario Kart and the new Mario and Donkey Kong and whatever else they might have is ready for the next thing. And they need to reveal this at all a very carefully planned time. And so while this increased production is interesting, I still think there is a 50-50 shot at still seeing Nintendo confirm the new thing before the end of 2023 and hopefully tell us what games will be coming to it. And so it's all very tricky. It's a very exciting time. This is the last point I'll remind you guys. To me, I know some people get frustrated with these conversations, and it kind of frustrates me that people get frustrated by it because it's just speculation and fans talking about a thing they like. But if I'm being honest, this is actually the most exciting time. Whether my predictions and other predictions are proven right and wrong, and that stuff no longer really matters. I still think we might see it this year, but it's no longer about the predictions, and it's just about the fact that it's fun to speculate and wonder what's going to happen. Because I do think we are right now existing on the cusp of something new coming from Nintendo. And the cusp could still be a year away, but I still would say that we're on the cusp of that. So 2023, with Zelda coming and next gen coming, it's just a very exciting time, and I can't wait to see what Nintendo finally shows us.